So go get you a taste of freedom. I will tell you and take a point of privilege before we start the program. I've got to tell you about this ice cream. I'm telling you, it is probably the most exciting thing that I've been dealing with in such a very dark world. So to deal with ice cream and to be happy about it, I want to introduce Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields, who many of you know, but he came to me, as I mentioned last night. You would think someone as organized as Dr. Shields would have talked to me, I don't know, a year ago. Why don't we work in the lab and develop ice cream? You would think someone who's written as many books as Dr. Shields has written would have come to me 6 months ago and said, you know what? We should do an ice cream flavor, and let's work. You would think someone who has the international reputation of Dr. Lamar Shields would have come to me a month ago, right? A month and said, you know what? Why don't we do an ice cream flavor? No. It was about 3 weeks ago that he calls me. He said, your anniversary is coming up. We should do an ice cream flavor in your honor. He said, tell me what kind of ice cream you like. You'll work with the chef. Don't worry about calories, because when you deal with freedom, calories don't matter. That's what I believe. I'm going to stand on that. Calories don't matter in the pursuit of freedom, right? So we did something different. It is 3 layers of ice cream. And layer 1 is black cocoa ice cream. Now, if you've never had black ice cream before, to open up the top and see black ice cream is very disruptive, right? It's intentional, but it's also very smooth. We disrupted the black cocoa ice cream with white chocolate chips to stir it and to give you a little crunch at the top. That's layer 1. Layer 2 is French vanilla. Now, in Madagascar, French vanilla is like gold. People fight over the vanilla, but it's about blending cultures together. So layer 2 is about let's blend some cultures together. Then there's a third layer, and that's Kenyan coffee bean with brownies. Now, in Kenya, you think about the Mau Mau resistance, Dr. Spence, and they were fighting over ownership of the land, coffee production. And so I took one of the steps of Kwanzaa, which is self-determination, Kuja Chakalia, and that's the third layer. So you dig down through disruption and intentionality, down into cultures blending together, and you end up with Kenyan coffee bean and self-determination. And it's called Dr. K's Taste of Freedom, Justice You Can Savor. I'm telling you, and freedom is not free. Freedom is not free. So we're going to get the program started. I will tell you that my husband, we have a new rule in our house, that we're not doing freedom in the house anymore. Because I've had 3 pints of freedom in the house, and the ice cream just dropped on Monday, and we are out of freedom. So we're not doing freedom in the Whitehead household anymore, because freedom ain't free, but there are some calories with freedom. What we've been showing up here is 5 years of the Karson. I want to introduce now Dr. Rodney Parker, our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, who's been walking alongside me for the last 5 years, helping me to have real vision with the Karson. So I'll leave it to him to open our program.
Good afternoon, good evening, sorry. I'm still stuck in earlier today. Good evening. Thank you so much, Dr. K, for allowing me this space. I want to welcome you to Loyola University, Maryland. This is a very unique place. One of the things that we really want to celebrate tonight is the Karson Institute for Race, Peace, and Social Justice. And we can't do that without acknowledging the fierce woman of Dr. Kasonya Wise Whitehead. If you don't mind, come on, let's put our hands together and give applause to her. 5 years, it doesn't seem like a long time, just depends on who's counting. But if you think 5 years ago, we were in the heart of multiple pandemics at the same time. It seemed that our world was in an upheaval, and 5 years later, it is still in an upheaval in a very different way, which shows us that the Karson is called to this time to speak truth to power. And we want to appreciate you, Dr. K, for the ways in which you do that. Tonight, we are going to actually, as a way of concluding our 5th year anniversary, having the Karson's Fall Institute Symposium. This is a time where we actually get to grapple with some of the hard things that we're needing to discuss in this day and time. And if you've ever been around Dr. K, she gets you going. It's going to be intellectually stimulating, and she brought her gang with her tonight. She brought her gang with her tonight to be able to talk about some of those things. So I want to express again, welcome to you, to Loyola University, Maryland, and also welcome on behalf of the Karson Institute for Race, Peace, and Social Justice. We pray that you have 25 more. Yeah, she's like, no, not 25, but yes, 25. Last but absolutely not least, on my list of things to do, Sarah Nagier is one of the students who works at the Karson Institute, and she's going to come and she's going to introduce Dr. K.
For the past 3 years, I have worked with the Karson Institute in almost every role, from social media intern to a junior research fellow. I have been here since the doors opened, and I will continue to work with them on behalf of social justice until I graduate. I want to take a moment to make sure that Dr. K is properly introduced, even though we all know who she is. Dr. Karsonia Wise Whitehead is the founding executive director of the Karson Institute and a professor of communication and the African American studies here at Loyola. She is the award-winning host of the radio talk show Today with Dr. K on WEAA 89 FM, and the recent recipient of 2 Telly Awards for her work hosting and producing a show for Maryland Public Television, along with Reverend John Lafarge, SJ Award, the Vernon Jarrett Medal for Journalistic Excellence for her outstanding reporting on the impact racial reckoning has had in helping to close social racial wealth gap for Black people in America. The Social Impact Award from the National Panhellenic Council, 2 regional Edward R. Murrow Awards for Excellence in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, 9 Chesapeake Associated Press Broadcasters Association Awards. She's the author of 5 books, including My Mother's Tomorrow, Dispatches from Baltimore's Black Butterfly, Race Brave, New and Selected Works, Notes from a Colored Girl, The Civil War Pocket Diaries of Emily Frances Davis, which received both the Darlene Clark Hine Book Award from the Organization of American Historians and Letitia Woods Brown Book Award from the Association of Black Women Historians. And lastly, Letters to My Black Sons, Raising Boys in the Post-Racial America. The Karson Institute has been featured on the cover of the Baltimore Sun and in the Afro, USA Today, and the New York Times. Dr. Whitehead is one of the most sought-after keynote speakers in the country, having given over 900 keynotes worldwide. And early this year, she was also appointed as the president of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, also known as ASALH. Now, if you would all join me in welcoming Dr. K.
Thank you very much. Sarah is my dear mentee who works with the Karson, has been with us since she walked in as a first-year student, and she's now a junior. And she told me when she goes on to become a nurse that she doesn't expect to keep working with the Karson, but I'm like, if you give them a little bit of justice, they'll keep coming back. And so she has found ways to connect us. She's also our first junior fellow. And what she has been researching, which is amazing, is looking at the maternal mortality rates for Black women and why are they so high at this moment. In 1964, last night I framed that Dr. King noted that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant. But truth is hard. It is hidden, and it must be pursued. It is rarely simple, but it cannot be manufactured. It does not take sides. It's neither red nor blue. Truth stands on its own. It is powerful, and it is under attack. We have always talked about speaking truth to power, but now power is trying to shut down the truth. Truth is more important now than ever. I'm excited to be here at the 5th anniversary of the Karson Institute for Race, Peace, and Social Justice. We are a think tank. We are a center. We are a place where truth is pursued, and we run after it. I want to take a moment to recognize my parents. For those of you who may not know, the Karson Institute is named after my father, Dr. Karson Wise, who's on the front row, along with my mother, Bonnie Wise. My mom is there. They have come up from Columbia, South Carolina, to stand with me. Next to my dad is Dr. Alvin Johnson, who's known me since I was a week old. And even back then, he said he could not quiet me. I'm kidding. I was very loud coming into the world, and I hope to remain as such. I think it's important for us to take moments to recognize how difficult it is. It is a moment of challenge. It is a moment of truth. And it is a moment that is calling upon us to think a little bit deeper about the work. I challenge people who look at the work of Dr. King. Everybody loves Dr. King at the March on Washington. Everybody loves the idea that one day we'll all hold hands, and they all love this idea of the dream. But people don't talk about the Dr. King of 64 and 65. The Dr. King of 66 and 67. The Dr. King who said, we may not be able to love the hell out of people. The Dr. King who questioned whether or not the mission that he had been fighting for, was it worth it? Were his people actually free in this America? We have to wrestle with those words and think about what does it mean to reflect on the content. For the students that are here, and I recognize some of my students from my Intro to Communication class, they are here not necessarily because they want to be, but because they have to be, right? So, sometimes you got to make them come, right, Dr. Smith? But it's okay. I'm excited that they are here joining me for this evening. We'd like to invite you, for our students and for others, to connect with us at the Karson. The Karson Institute is in the library on the 2nd floor if you've not been there. We invite you to come. Students, it is a place that is open. It is a place that's a safe space, as safe as it can be. Safety is something you have to carve out for yourself. So let's be very clear. You come and go, well, I said this, what happened? No. Safety is about all of us recognizing the space that we're in, and we're all doing our part. Tonight, we have a very interesting conversation for you. We have brought together 3 scholars from very different fields to wrestle with this moment. What does this moment mean? I mentioned today on the radio that Barack Obama had a beer summit. And Jason Green, who worked in the Obama administration, probably can talk about that. I don't do beer summits, but I do ice cream summits. Because I do think that ice cream is the great equalizer. And that's what I want you to go into the conversation tonight. It will be challenging. It will be hard, but it's the difficult conversations that will hopefully get us to where we need to be. We're going to begin with Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields. He is an award-winning educator. He is an author, and he's a social impact strategist. When he comes to the front, he's going to give us an activity to help frame what we are doing. Before he does come up, I want to invite up Jason Green. Jason is unable to stay. I want to know that Jason flew into town to join us last night. Mr. Green is a documentary filmmaker, and he's an alum of the Obama 2008 campaign in the Obama White House. We want to have him just make a few comments since he's unable to stay, and instead, Dr. Shields will join us on the panel. At the end of the evening, we'll have a closing prayer by my father, who I did not ask, but he's a pastor. Stay ready. You don't have to get ready. My dad will come up and give us a closing prayer, and then we'll have a grounding activity by Father Tim Brown at the end. I also want to recognize Kim Derrickson, our Associate Provost. The Karson Institute now sits under Kim Derrickson. I'm excited to build with him going forward. Jason Green.
Thank you, Dr. K. And good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Green, and I am so sorry that I'm unable to stay and be on the panel. In between my agreeing to be a part of this evening and tonight, my family, my wife and I relocated to Dallas, Texas. But this event was so important. I was so glad to be able to be a part of last night. And the work of the Karson is so critical that I flew in last night, and I'm going to catch the 8:40 flight, in theory, tonight. And I have to get back to Dallas because I appreciate my freedom, and this is the only way I'm going to keep it from my wife. It's very important. Let me say this. God is good. All the time? God is good. And the evidence of God's goodness is you all, and you. Dr. K doesn't know this, but she talked about me being a documentarian. I'm also an author of the book that's coming out, in part because of the liberty and light that Dr. K has provided, and given us the freedom to tell our stories and to find our own truths. And so I'm telling a story about my grandmother, inspired by the reverence with which Dr. K talks about her family. And my grandmother told me a story. I was working in the Obama White House until my grandmother, at 95 years old, fell ill. And I had to leave the White House to go sit with her in her hospital room, because that's where she introduced me to service. And I thought it was time for me to go sit and hold her hand. And one of the stories she told me about was how in 1868, just 4 years after emancipation here in Maryland, my great-great-grandfather and some other men and women, for $54, purchased 3 acres of land in Montgomery County, Maryland. And on that land, they built a schoolhouse to educate colored children. And I had spent a career in the Obama administration as a lawyer, perfecting my paralysis by analysis. And I said, wait, there had to be a safer way than you building a schoolhouse on the main drag, painting it white, and saying, we're educating black children here. But my grandmother stopped me short. And she said, Jason, there was no education for black children in our community. Your great-great-grandfather, your great-great-grandmother, those other men and those other women looked around their community, they saw a need, and they took action because they were doers, and doers do. You looked around your community, and you saw a need, and you took action because you're a doer, and doers do. And that's what the Karson is. And Karson is that light. You talked about being the lighthouse. Well, you've been that light for so many, for us to follow, but also to warm up in the cold. And so I encourage us all. That moment was so simple yet profound. For someone like me who had been on the side of paralysis by analysis, where I could think and I could conject, I had the luxury of options. But now I realize that I want to be on the side of the doers. I want to be on the side of those that look around their community, who see needs and take action. I encourage you to be in that company as well. And I hope that we can appreciate the rest of this symposium and phrased in that sort of work. So thank you so much for the opportunity to address you. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you, and just so appreciate the work of the Karson.
Mary McLeod Bethune said the true worth of a race must be measured by the character of its woman. So can we just honor this woman, Dr. K. Wise Whitehead, and her family in her absence? Well, let's keep it going, because again, when you do this work, your family, sometimes, quite often, we miss out on those things. And when you think about the late nights of doing this work, and you think about the flights, and we thank God for her protection. We thank God for her mother and her father and Dr. Al Van. That's an inside joke. I said, my name is not Alvin, it's Al Van. You know, what's beautiful, about this time, you said, Kate, this is working for me? Let's see. I don't know if it is. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, all right, there we go. So I want to paint a picture. You know, my good friend, Dr. Spence, normally wears these shirts with all these images. And as I was getting dressed today, I said, you know what, I should put on my Sankofa shirt. And then I said, if I do, then Dr. K was like, well, you look a little too casual. And then I walk in, and my brother does not have his traditional shirt on with all the languages, Swahili, Japanese, Italian, how do we speak in Baltimore? Y'all missed that part because that was funny right there. But I want to create an image of this concept of what Sankofa is and the spirit of Sankofa. And so if you don't know the spirit of Sankofa, just imagine a bird's body facing that way. And then his head is going that way. Now, some people say you can't drive forward, Pastor, but looking through a rearview mirror. But the spirit of Sankofa says we actually can, because the body is going this way, but the reminder is to take a look how far you come. And it made me think about when I was walking my dog one day, and it's so interesting. If anybody has a dog and you let them go, it's almost like a kid. You let the dog go and they're walking, and I remember my dog was walking, and he just kept looking to see, oh, he's still there. And he just kept walking, and he was like, he's still there. And just kept walking. And so as we prepare for this conversation, I want you to think about this. I'm going to challenge, well, not challenge many of you all, because you all are in love with the device. It's called a cell phone. I call young people screenagers. Now you guys are adults. You all love, I know people that will leave their insulin at home and go to work, but come back to get their cell phone. Am I talking to the right people in here? I know some people that will leave their kid in daycare and pay the extra fee, but left that cell phone. I know parents who ain't never been up to a parent-teacher conference, and you take that child's cell phone, she come up there with a bonnet on and her house shoes on. Y'all act like you don't know what I'm talking about. She will say, I heard you, Dr. K, on the radio. I don't care who you are, but did you take Raheem's cell phone? So I'm going to challenge you, because I know y'all love this cell phone because you need those dopamine fixes. And that's why I call y'all dope fiends. Because you got to look at your device and you get a joke. So I'm gonna ask you right now to do something that y'all probably already doing. Take out your cell phone. Look at you. Y'all so happy, like, yes. Yes. I didn't say look at it yet, because now you're gonna lose your direction, all right? I just said take the cell phone out. And we are having what I call this Sankofa moment. So we're gonna do something with our cell phone, but I got to give you all some directions, because I know some of y'all are going to jump ahead. You're going to look at what's the score, because there's some Thursday night football on. You're looking at the Amazon lead. Some of y'all, I know y'all got your Ring, because I can hear the Ring device going off. See, I'm the only one with Ring when you hear that ching, 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 ching. Somebody walking past your house. Don't act like you all don't have Ring, because I know I do. See, there we go. So pull out your cell phone. Just pull out. Just take a look at it. Say, hello, cell phone. Take a look at it. Now, this activity may not work if you have a flip phone. No judgment here. Pastor Karson, you got a flip phone? Mama Katie, he has a flip phone? Okay. Guys, double check. All right, so you're going to pull your phone out, okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to look for a photo. All right, let me paint the picture. I want you to look for a photo, not somebody that you wanted to marry, but you didn't marry. I want you to look just for a couple of images. Let me just paint it for you. Look for a photo that gives you a moment of joy, a moment of a change, maybe a person that taught you something, or a place that you still call home. Just look through your device right now. At photos, we're not looking at sales on Amazon, okay? So let me paint the picture again. A moment of joy, something that brings you, this is what we call a Sankofa moment, a moment of joy, a moment of change. Maybe somebody that taught you something, or maybe a person that you have not seen in a long time. And just look at just find a picture. I'm gonna give you about a minute or two. Find that picture. And don't pass your phone. If you work with kids, you know they tell you not to swipe past. I don't want to get nobody in trouble, all right? So just find that image. Again, something that brings you joy, something that brings you excitement, a person that might have taught you something, a place that you still call home, okay? When you get it, say, I got it. All right, I see some slow folks on this side. So I want to start moving around with this microphone, because the teacher about to come. All right, when you get it, say, I got it. All right, I still see some people still scrolling. You got that image, right? Got that image? All right, so here's the next question. When you look at that image, just what's happening in that photo? Just what's happening, why did you choose it, and what story or lesson does it hold for you? Just think about this. look at the image and just what's happening. What's happening in the image, and why did you choose that, and what story or lesson is it teaching you? Just hold on to that right now. Just look at it, because we're going to do something with this. This is that Sankofa moment. And hopefully you reached far back, not just something that you just took a photo of recently, but maybe something a while ago. All right, just look at that. So answer those 4 questions, okay? Now what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody that you don't know, because they're going to be like, girl, you used that photo of me, you should have got a different photo. No, somebody that don't know you. Just find somebody right now. We're going to link up. Find somebody that you don't know. You're going to share that photo, all right? Find somebody, and you're going to share this. This is our Sankofa moment. We're looking back. So find a person not sitting next to you unless you don't know that person, and you're going to share those 4 questions. What's happening in the photo? Why did you choose that photo? Share a story. So for us, some people aren't moving yet. Come on, Lewis. Come on, what you doing? Find somebody. 2 people, real quick. This is our Sankofa moment. Find somebody. You didn't know you were coming to work today. Got about 5 minutes. What's happening in this photo? Why did you choose this photo? Let's find somebody you don't know. There you go, Sean. You got somebody right there. So I want everybody to pause for 1 second. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause for 1 second. All right, so while the person is talking, just listen. No interruptions, no advice. Just listen to what they're saying. Keep it going. You're doing great. I'm loving these photos. Yes. Yes, share the image. Yes, keep it going. One minute, keep it going. 1 minute, keep it going. "30 seconds, keep it going. You're doing great." "10 seconds. This is our Sankofa moment. Keep it going." "5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 2 claps, 2 claps. 2 claps, 2 claps. Thank your partner. Get on back to your seats. Thank your partner. Get on back to your seats. So this is our Sankofa moment. So as I walked around and I listened, some of you all still showing photos. All right, let's stop this. Let's break this party up over here. Let's break this party up over here. They showing hairstyles like, girl, look at my hair when I went to Jamaica. Look at me over here when I went to the prom. All right, let me get everyone's attention. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All eyes on me. Thank you. So I appreciate this Sankofa moment. So as I was walking around, I was writing some notes, and this thing came to me. It says, our phones may hold thousands of pictures, but only have a few that tell the truth of who we really are. If you could have seen your faces, watching you just glow. This is what this Sankofa moment is, going back. Remembering what it was like. Remembering what you might have looked like, or what it felt like, or what it sounded like. That's a Sankofa moment, to see the expressions on your faces. Well, beautiful. And even though that image could have been a hard image, I want to just invite my guy right here. What's your name? Yes. Can you just share with us the conversation you all had real quick?
So this photo is actually my birthday party photo.
Go ahead. Tell us.
So this was a complete surprise because I had no idea what was going on. It was Saturday. We had game night. I was surprised. That's what's happening in the photo. Why did I choose it? Because it was honestly a really great time. I was genuinely terrified because I was like, oh, so these people could plan the most dubious of things and I've had no idea. And what story or lesson did I get from it? It just showed me I chose really great friends that day. So, yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that's your Sankofa moment. So as we begin the rest of the conversation today, I just wish you all could have seen your faces. The excitement that you wanted to share, the beauty that we have in this room, and not even comparing what someone was sharing, but the fact that you listened without judgment, you know, with patience and with honesty, and not knowing anybody in this room, and to hear the young brother to then say, you know, how I felt in this space, not knowing what to expect. And that's the beauty of the history that we carry. We all carry a piece of history. People, Dr. K, ask me all the time, they say, Lamar, where are you from? And I always say, my mother's kitchen. I say my mother's kitchen because I have this theory about gumbo and seasonings. My belief is that we all have a little seasoning to add, but we debate on what season goes next. I grew up speaking Spanish, so you cannot, Puerto Ricans and Mexicans will argue over who has the best rice. Africans, my African brother says I have roots from Sierra Leone. You can't tell no Nigerian and Ghanaian who makes the best what? Jollof. Look at the jollof rice. And so the only difference is how we season our food. And we all have a level of seasoning in us. And so to see the expression, we call that your Sankofa moment. That even though this is what you were doing. You were doing this with your image. You were moving forward, but you look back at that grace and that goodness that was behind you. And so as we begin to set the stage, I want to bring Dr. K back up. Give yourselves a round of applause. Excellent, excellent, excellent job.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shields. That Sankofa moment, which I found to be really exciting. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the evening. What we're doing tonight is what I call artivism, which is really a unique way that the Karson enters into spaces. We believe that art is a form of activism. And so we combine music with activities where you move around, where you're gonna sit, you're gonna hear some things tonight. We have students that are gonna be doing a reading from Dr. King and a reading. We're gonna talk about the other work with Nicole Hannah-Jones. So it's gonna pull all of those together in less than an hour. We have all of this planned out for you. So I want to ask my panelists to join me here on the stage. Dr. Lester Spence is a professor of political science at Johns Hopkins University. If you can just welcome him up. He is in plain clothes tonight. I have no idea why. Dr. Spence, thank you for joining us. Just join with the mic. We're going to ask Dr. Shields, who you just heard from, to come up. He's taking Mr. Green's place. Thank you so much, Dr. Shields, for stepping in. And Qatar West is a senior equity specialist from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Come on up, Qatar. Thank you. So I want to start with you, Dr. Spence. When we talk about political systems, there are a number of pundits who are trying to compare this moment that we're in to Nazi Germany, except that the framework that Nazi Germany used was based on Jim Crow. So can you help us to understand the connection between that moment from Jim Crow all the way to this moment now? He said,
now the thing is usually I don't need no mic.
One, two.
Can you grab
I usually don't need no mic, but first of all, thank you. It's weird, real quick. I taught Jason Green in undergrad. So I didn't know he was going to be on a panel until today, right? I remember I lost one of my best friends like the year of 9/11, and I remember giving a speech about 9/11 in a public like this, and Jason had to comfort me because I actually started crying while I was giving the speech, right? And just to see him grow and develop, it's like that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. But I was going to say, and we're here to kind of wrestle with this current moment by connecting it to the past. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you a brief history. When you think about the Nazi Party, we think about a party that developed at its core as a racist party. It was a party that sought to restore Germany to greatness through racial purification and glorification of the Volk, kind of like the German folk, and that folk concept was racialized. Now the thing is when we think about what the Nazi party stood for and what it did, we just located on the other side of the transatlantic. But if you actually look at how they thought of themselves and what they were doing, it's clear that they looked to the United States as kind of a bellwether. So I'll start with Hitler himself. I'll read a couple of quotes from Hitler. This is the beginning. This is before the Nazis took power, maybe in the 20s. There is currently one state in which one can observe at least weak beginnings of a better conception. This is, of course, not our exemplary German Republic, but the American Union, in which an effort is being made to consider the dictates of region to at least some extent. The American Union categorically refuses the immigration of physically unhealthy elements and simply excludes the immigration of certain races. In these respects, America already pays obeisance, at least in tentative first steps, to the characteristic Volkish conception of the state. I'm a political scientist. If you look at the history, in fact, not only am I a political scientist, I'm a political scientist at the first or second political science department in the country, Johns Hopkins University. And we have records of that first political science moment in which historians and scholars at Hopkins try to argue that America was the unique consequence of a Teutonic germ that was present in certain populations. That Teutonic germ gave them the capacity to be independent and actually cohered in a certain advanced state, right? Now, if we look a little bit further in Nazis' own history to the creation of the Nuremberg laws, the Nuremberg laws had three components. The first component was making the swastika the national flag. But the second component, citizenship law, there was the citizenship law. Jews are second-class citizens. The third law was the blood law, which criminalized intermarriage. Those two aspects of the Nuremberg laws come directly from the United States. You can see text after text where they're turning to the United States for ideas of how to figure out their Jewish problem. They didn't take everything wholesale. So the United States, for example, focused much more on segregation than Nazi Germany did, at least until the Holocaust. But they took a number of components. And then the final thing, if you think about that dynamic of actually purification and glorification of the Volk, if you look at the modern GOP seeks to end birthright citizenship, seeks to deport illegals, quote unquote, seeks to gut Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act, and seeks to use the state against political enemies. And finally, it views violence as legitimate means of conflict resolution. With the Make America Great Again movement, we can draw straight line paths to Nazi Germany, but then straight line paths from Nazi Germany to Jim Crow and to that early Dixiecrat dynamic. So it's like the only reason we're not seeing it is because we're not using our eyes.
Well, no, I appreciate that. Just to take it back, when Dr. Spence and I are always kind of on panels together as the political scientist and the historian, just looking to frame it and historicize it. So if you take it back to Jim Crow, you actually can take it back earlier than that. You actually can take it back to the founding of this country. In order for blackness to be objectified, whiteness had to be lifted up and made superior. Because we know whenever fascism exists, anti-blackness always exists with fascism. It actually cannot stand on its own. So it's not just about what happened with Jim Crow, it's the ways in which they set up the laws after American slavery ended. They wanted to make sure after the 10 years of Reconstruction that every single avenue open to black people would be closed. And it really came down to the ballot, because what they found in the South is as soon as black men were able to vote, they actually went in, and I call it wedding band power, because I do believe that black women whispered in the ears of their husband and said, when you go in to vote, you are voting for the family. I cannot imagine that the conversations were not happening at home, which is why you saw over 600 black men get elected throughout the South. And everything from comptroller to mayor to sheriff, that's what they wanted to shut down. Because if you can vote, you put people in place who will then change the world in your perspective, in your honor, to make sure you are being seen. Thank you so much. I want to come to Dr. Shields, actually, because to connect this with us and to think about how we're setting the stage for this moment, people tend to look at Trump 2.0 kind of as a single moment, except it's part of a continuum. So if we can go back beyond Trump 2.0 into Biden, now I call that Biden 3.0, right? Because Biden had a long career. Dude was elected when Shirley Chisholm ran for office, so he was hanging out for a long time. He actually wrote some of the laws that worked against black people. I mean, he was a part of that. He was the one that sat there and cross-examined Anita Hill and put her on the hot seat to try to bring her to tears. We remember that Joe Biden. But Joe Biden 3.0, we tend to have a lot of forgiveness. We got to go back to Trump 1.0, and then I think we got to go to Obama 1.0 and 2.0. So can you take us back to that moment when folks were celebrating around the election of Barack Obama, and they said, we are now post-racial, life has changed. And this is a unique question for Dr. Shields, because there's an iconic photograph of Barack Obama, I think, holding up a little boy in the White House. That little boy is Dr. Shields' son, who's now a first-year student at North Carolina Central. So the world has shifted just in how your son has grown up.
Wow, so that little boy is on his way home right now, coming from North Carolina Central. I've never heard of a fall break when I was in college, but he is breaking this way. Yeah, so, you know, what's interesting, so my son, there are two famous photos of the president with children. One is a young man who's touching Obama's head. And then it's my son, the two photos. Pete Souza, who happens to be from Chicago, took the photo. We were invited to the White House, actually. If you see the photo, there's a journalist. At the time when they wanted to just cover black stories, Washington Post, they would call me and was like, hey, want to talk black folks? They would call me up. And then this one day they called to say, hey, the president wants to interview a bunch of kids about their thoughts about having a black president. And so I didn't even think in my house. I thought outside of my house. And I thought about my daughter, Hadia, or we call her Hadiah, and she did the interview. And it was interesting when they asked her, and I'm going to go to what you said, they asked her, well, how did you feel having a black president? And she was like, she sort of played Obama and said, you know, I'm more concerned about the two little brown girls that get a chance to grow up in the White House, Sasha and Malia. And so at the time, you know, Mike's wife, we were, you know, married, and we get a call to come to the White House. The president wants to meet all the kids. And, you know, sisters, Delta sisters, she was like, if we not just taking her down, I said, we, first of all, they called me. Let's not talk about we. She said, we taking all the kids in there. So my son goes in, and I'm in what they call the Situation Room. There's a real room in there called the Situation Room. And all of a sudden I hear Obama's there, and I didn't see it. My son goes in, he picks, Mosiah was standing by the door, he picks Obama. Obama picks him up, takes him in, he gives him, Obama loves M&Ms, so we have M&Ms and things of that nature. And so I use that image as a way to remind my son of his greatness. Obama, you know, when I met him, I said, at the time, I said, we have two things in common. We were both married to a woman named Michelle, and we both are from Chicago. And so we sort of laughed about that. And I use that image of my son, of Obama, as a reminder of the possibility, because in Detroit, it was some teachers did research on imagery for children, and they put these images in front of them and helped them to do well on tests. And Obama's image was one of them. But I must say, as I started to study Obama, there became a lot of disappointment. It was not just ceremonial, it was excitement in the family because we were there, but then it started to sour. And, you know, I don't want to hate on my homeboy being from Chicago, but then I was very disappointed in what was being passed, what was being asked, and I was very disappointed of the lack of reaching back out to the Sankofa, as we talk about Sankofa, to people that look like us, the people that have got you in there. And then I started reading some of the laws, and I started looking at some of the debates, and then it became very ceremonial. Then I thought about something that the Minister Farrakhan said, who was from Chicago. He said Obama was not elected, but he was selected. And I started to think about that even more, and I started to look at the conversations that he was having. I started to think about how it was affecting me as a black man, and then I became very disappointed. But then I was somewhat of afraid to go public with my disappointment. And I'm going somewhere. I was, you know, somewhat afraid because this is a man who the image carried everything. His image is in the house in my son's bedroom as a reminder when my son is being disrespectful. This is a reminder of where you came from. But even deep down inside, I sort of struggle. I thought about who I love. My hero to this day is Malcolm X, who I love to see him debate all these individuals. And I was somewhat of afraid to even publicly talk about this man who, as an image, did a lot, but when I started to discover, really didn't do a whole lot for folks that look like us. And I became very disappointed. And so then I had to find a group of people who felt the same way and wanted to frame our conversation not just as another black person talking about a black man. It was the conversation I said that I had with you, is that I'd rather have conversation with people who aren't talking feelings and emotions but have stats and data to back things up. And we just could not find those individuals. And then of course, going back to Biden, because again, I think, Kay studies a lot of American history. I study a lot of African history. And there is an image that's in my house that says, be careful with the people that you invite into your home. And that image has been with me for a very long time. So then I even started to think about Biden, Anita Hill. I started thinking about his work in Delaware. I started thinking about the incarceration of black men. Yep. And I started to think, man, we were sold a bill of goods. And I think that we're going to see more of that as we start to see the things manifest with our president. And then I think what also really upset me about this the Sankofa moment, the down disrespect that Obama had for black men when he went out to try to get them to vote for Kamala Harris after you said nothing, after you didn't fight Trump. And then you come to communities that embraced you and then being disrespectful to black men. And that also sort of turned me off. And so I think the conversation of Obama is going to, just like COVID, is going to be a conversation that we're going to keep having, that we're going to eventually see the effects of it later on. Ceremonial, love it. If Obama came in here, but if we're having a conversation, there's some things that need to hold you accountable for, some laws, some things you could have fought. Great heart, especially as an educator. Things I sat on education. You probably don't know this. When Obama got elected, I was a part of this educational committee, and I'm sitting on the phone with people. I was so excited, and then the excitement just went down like this, because I'm like, I'm an educator. I'm not feeling. And Arnie Duncan, who really destroyed Chicago schools, that's a whole other conversation, came in as the czar, and so it was a bittersweet moment about him going. I'm glad you brought the image because it started to shift. And I think I'm probably going to write a piece about that.
You should
write a piece about just my disappointment, the letdown, but then also it lifted my son up. And I have to also acknowledge that because it did do something for my son. And even that night, I'm going to wrap up after this, just to show you the power of imagery. When we got our son dressed that day to go to the White House the day before, and we put on a little red, we put on a little blue, because we didn't know who's going to be in the next 4 years. So we got a little Republican. And my son kept saying, I'm going to Barack Obama's house. Like, the imagery of this kid who had a very strong vocabulary he even knew the power. But now to my son who's reading books by James Baldwin and Ta-Nehisi Coates, even though my son now is starting to push back on, what this president did or didn't do for us. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. No, it always makes me think about what Zora Neale Hurston said, that all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Yes.
And I often wonder when the black community will be able to have an honest conversation about the disappointment that was and still is Barack Obama. Yeah. Because I was disappointed when Joe Biden passed the torch to Kamala Harris, which was offensive to black women. It was extremely offensive to think that she could save America in 107 days, but that Barack Obama did not endorse her till almost 10 days later. He said he was just trying to wait to check the temperature. I'm like, it's Kamala and Trump. Like, what temperature are you checking? But that was him every step of the way, which leads to you, Katara, because you work in Anne Arundel County Schools. So we're talking about senior equity specialists and the images that children have to deal with. We are now teaching children who grew up with a black president. They're also blaming us because we elected the person that's in there now. Like, they saw the possibility and now they see it being taken away from them. So can you kind of frame this for us from an educational perspective to think about K-12?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to scoot up a little bit because my feet are dangling. And so, just listening to what the good doctors have been saying, I think I really want to name this moment that we're in as an opportunity for empowerment for our young people. This is an opportunity for us to really empower them to be the leaders and the change makers that they want to be and the change makers that we really need. And just for a second, I want to kind of describe for you my thinking about empowerment. And so a lot of times in education, you might hear folks say, well, we need teachers to empower students. We need educators to, make students feel good and give them a voice. And a lot of times that kind of comes in the form of maybe a survey or asking them an idea of some sort. It's kind of this binary, right? You do it, you don't, you have it, you don't. But for me, empowering really is more a process, right? It's this process through which we give kids to really kind of embody this sense of liberation. So when I'm empowering students, I'm giving them this sense of liberation, which ultimately leads to humanization. That is really what we're trying to get at when we're talking about empowering students. We're wanting to make sure that they understand who they are, whose they are, where they're going, so that they can advocate for themselves and for their peers. So as I think about this time, this moment, this is an opportunity for us as the adults and the educators, the professors, to create these spaces where students can share their experiences, can share their perspective, tell their stories in real ways so that they become humanized for the adults that are supposed to take care of them. And so I think about one of the programs that we have in our district. It's called our Student Equity Advisory Team. This is a group of 7th through 12th graders, right? So we're starting this empowering process, right? At a very young age where we are creating space, not even allowing, we're creating spaces and platforms for students to share what's happening in their world, what's happening in their school communities, what's happening in their home communities. At this very moment, our seed ambassadors are in a meeting with the Anne Arundel County Office of Equity and Human Relations, where they're engaged in a community conversation about what's happening in their home communities, right? So we're giving kids this voice, we're giving them this opportunity to share, to have things happen. A lot of times students will share things and nothing takes place, right? How many times have you all been in a class or at work when someone asks you for your opinion and then nothing's done? Right, that happens a lot. And what we're trying to do through this empowerment process, again, this process of liberation and this process of freedom, part of that means we have to do something with what we hear. And so as part of the SEAT program, we provide opportunities through different symposiums, through being panelists with our educators, right? So they get a chance to tell teachers, this is what I'm experiencing in my classroom. This is what's happening to me as an only or as one of few. in the hallways or in the classroom. These are the things that's happening in the cafeteria, right? These are the things that health-wise, these are the things that I'm experiencing. So we're providing them with these opportunities. So again, as I think about where we are, in education, where we are in this world, we know that education is facing so many challenges, from opportunity gaps to a reduction in resources, to the decline of students' social and emotional health just because of what they're seeing on television or what they're experiencing at home. We know there are many challenges, so we have to provide these opportunities for them to share their perspective. So again, this for me is a moment, an opportunity for empowering.
Can I jump in?
Thank you so much. We have to move to another activity, but then we'll come back to you. So I'm asking whether or not people have ever seen a movie called The Wiz. Has anyone ever seen The Wiz? Not The Wizard of Oz, but The Wiz with Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. And if you remember, when they got to The Wiz, and you had this whole big screen, and behind it was Richard Pryor, which I think is the best image of what does it mean to believe in something and then look and see there's something else there. But that he gave people what they asked for. Diana Ross wanted to go home. He gave her shoes, click them, and think about home. Michael Jackson wanted a brain. He said, okay, I'm going to give you some books, and you can stuff it up here, and you have a brain. Nipsey Russell, which was a Tin Man, said, I want a heart. He said, you already have one. Let me give you this little heart here. You can stick it up there. But remember when he got to the lion? And the lion said, I want courage.
Yeah.
And Richard Pryor said, I can't give you that because it's already inside of you.
Yeah.
I believe this is a moment of courage. And it's actually already inside of us. This is the artivism portion, which I told Dr. Shields just to give us a moment here, because we're going to do two things, and one is going to involve you. First, we're going to have a student, Ava Irving, who's a junior pre-med student here at Loyola University, Maryland, who's going to read a selection from The Idea of America by Nicole Hannah-Jones. And then after that, I want you to listen to a song called Lift Every Voice and Sing. Just by show of hands, how many of you have ever sang Lift Every Voice and Sing? At least once, right? You know it, you understand that it was originally written to honor Booker T. Washington. And so you're talking going back to 1900 when James Weldon Johnson wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it was his brother, John Rosamond Johnson, who put it to music. The song was first sung publicly by 500 school children on February 12, 1900. And so it goes back. People stand up, they mumble the words. Everyone knows the first stanza, and that's about it. Then they're looking around. But if you sit with the words, it really evokes something in you. So what we're going to do after Ava reads her excerpt, I'm going to play Lift Every Voice and Sing. I'm going to ask you not to stand up because you might feel called to stand up and sing it. No, I want you to listen to it. And then I want us to reflect on it. We're going to play the first 2 minutes, the stanza that everybody knows and the stanza that most people don't know. Please welcome Ava Irving, a student here at Loyola University.
Hi, everyone. I hope we're doing well. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Dr. K. Thank you for having me. Today, I'll be reading an excerpt from The Idea of America by Nicole Hannah-Jones. My dad always flew an American flag in front of our yard. The blue paint on our 2-story house was perennially chipping. The fence, or the rail by the stairs, or the front door existed in a perpetual state of disrepair, but that flag always flew pristine. Our corner lot, which had been redlined by the federal government, was along the river that divided the black side from the white side of our Iowa town. At the edge of our lawn, on a high aluminum pole, soared a flag, which my dad would replace as soon as he showed the slightest tatter. So when I was young, that flag outside our home never made sense to me. How could this black man, having seen firsthand the way this country has abused black Americans, how is it refused to treat us as full citizens proudly fly its banner? I didn't understand his patriotism. It deeply embarrassed me. I had been taught in school, through cultural osmosis, that the flag wasn't really ours, that our history as a people began with enslavement and that we had contributed little to this great nation. It had seemed that the closest thing Black Americans could have to cultural pride was found in our vague connection to Africa, a place we had never been. That my dad had felt so much honor in being an American felt like a marker of degradation. His acceptance was our subordination. Like most young people, I thought I understood so much, when in fact I understood so little. My father knew exactly what he was doing when he raised that flag. He knew that our people's contributions to building the richest and most powerful nation in the world were indelible, that the United States would simply not exist without us. The United States is a nation founded on the ideal and a lie. Our Declaration of Independence, signed on July 4th, 1776, proclaims that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. But the white men who drafted those words did not believe them to be true for the hundreds of thousands of Black people in their midst. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness did not fully apply to 1/5 of the country. Yet, despite being violently denied in the freedom and justice promised to all, Black Americans believe fervently in American greed. Through centuries of Black resistance and protest, we have helped the country lift its founding ideals, and not only for ourselves, Black rights struggles paved the way for every other rights struggle, including women's and gay rights, immigrant and disability rights. Without the idealistic, strenuous, and patriotic efforts of Black Americans, our democracy today would most likely look very different. It might not be a democracy at all. My father knew what would take me years to understand, that Black Americans, as much as those men cast in alabaster in the nation's capital, are the true nation's founding fathers, and that no people has a greater claim to that flag than us. Thank you.
So while they're setting that up, why don't I go back to Dr. Shields? You had wanted to respond to Katara. I'll have you do that while they set up the Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Yeah, I want to add to what Miss West says, because I get a chance to work with her in Anne Arundel County. You know, being someone who's teaching young people how to advocate for themselves, it's beautiful watching their superintendent, Dr. Mark Bedell, who is really a forward thinker, because he's one of the very few superintendents that will still use diversity, equity, and inclusion, even in the conversation. But then he was also bold enough to give young people less the money, the young people funding to do the work. Because quite often we want young people to go out and serve, but there are no resources. And when I heard him speak, I guess a couple of weeks ago, and he said, all of my superintendent friends said, you got to be out of your mind to continue to have these conversations. Mm-hmm. And he's bold and brave enough to do it. And I think that it's so important I want to acknowledge the work that you all are doing at the middle and high school level, where young people have this voice, but then they don't do anything. I was on the way in, I was just telling my friend over here about a documentary about Dr. King and one of his close allies, Andrew Young, that's coming out. And Andrew Young was saying nobody wanted to work with King. He said he had just gotten stabbed. He said we were afraid to go in the South. And then the third thing, he said he had no money. He didn't have any money. And so how dare us send young people out? We give them these ideas, but we don't give them the financial resources or the backing to support them in their work. And so they do get disappointed. So to hear Andrew Young say that this happened in the 50s, 60s, and still to this day. So to hear that you guys are, supporting the kids financially by giving them, funding to do the work, I think is so important for other educators who are out there to continue to do that, because young people, we know they have a voice. And when they link up with adults together that can help direct them of what you're doing, mm-hmm. I think we can get a lot of work done. And it has to start. Every movement in this country, from this song that was written at Florida Memorial, I got a chance to go to the school and to see the original words there. Every movement across the globe has been moved by young people. Dr. King was a young man. I know he looked old to us. He was young. Jesus
You know
was
what,
young.
Dr. Shields, with that in mind,
Yeah.
as a young person,
Yeah.
we're going to go to
We got
the
it.
King's Return for Lift Every Voice and Sing. But I want you to just sit with this and use that device, because you called you screenagers, use that phone.
Some notes down.
But just kind of write down what speaks to you, because I want to hear from you after we take a listen to it. So I stop it here for a moment before I play the last one, because what pops out to me is where hope unborn had died. If you really listen to the words which trace our journey in this country, that even when hope feels like it is hopeless, you keep hoping even more. Let's play that last stanza. Yes. I will tell you that the two lines that always make me cry. God of our weary years and God of our silent tears. I never knew why adults would cry when they sang that as a child. I just did not understand until I had children of my own. Until you start to struggle on your own, you know what it means to have those silent tears and those weary years. I want to come to our panelists now, using Lift Every Voice and Sing, which has become kind of an ongoing trope in the Black community. Every time I go to something during Black History Month, it's like, we're going to start, everybody lift every voice and sing. Oh, my husband's here. Hey, I'm sorry. It just comes in and distracts me every time. So when
Look at my fine husband.
Sorry. I tell you, 26 years still takes my breath away. So I was talking about lift every voice and
Isn't
sing.
good? Isn't God good?
Come on, all the time. So lift every voice and sing. That it has become a trope in the Black community. If you go to things during Black History Month, everybody stands up and sings it, but I don't think people sit with it. My hope is that in this moment where you weren't singing and you weren't trying to figure out the words and you just listen to the brothers' rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing. I want to come back to Dr. Spence, because I think that in this moment, in order for us to get through this moment, and I don't know what the end is going to be, I think we have to go back to how we got through it before. Fannie Lou Hamer's birthday was last week. And Fannie Lou Hamer, as some people might know, you have to look her up, was a sharecropper, but she could read and write. And she said, if we're going to try to get people registered to vote, because no one ever told her that Black people could vote. She said, well, I'll go, I can read and write. They beat her when she tried to register. But listen, it was more than that. The white person, the sheriff, had the 2 Black deputies beat her until they got tired. And when they got tired, then he brought in a second team to continue to beat her until they got tired. And when they got tired, he brought in a third team to rape her. And they said she was laying on that bloody mattress and she began to sing. Even in that moment, Fannie Lou Hamer sang. And that led her to founding the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. That's what she meant when she said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But Fannie Lou Hamer gives us a pathway forward. Septima Poinsett Clark from the Highlander Institute gives us a pathway forward. So talk to us, Dr. Spence, from a political perspective. What is the pathway forward coming out of this moment?
So first, I'd actually gently push back. What I think we need to do is actually not necessarily sit with, but sing that song more often. And the reason we need to sing that song more often, there are actually 2 reasons. One is because the act of singing brings us together in a very special way. And then the second, the act of singing or just saying something out loud causes us to internalize the meanings of the words bodily in a way that just sitting with them doesn't necessarily do, right? So there's a lot of things that we should be doing, but what I'd like to think about, particularly given your turn towards given the artivism work that the Karson Institute does, is, do y'all remember, how many of y'all attended marches when George Floyd died? For the Black people in the room, how many of y'all tripped at so many white people being in the marches? Raise your hand. Like for me, I taught, there was a map that somebody had created of all the places where you saw Black Lives Matter protests. Right? Now, I know the state of Michigan like the back of my hand still. And I was looking at that map. I'm like, they marched in Troy? Like, what? Like in Troy? I bet if you look at that map, and you can't find it anymore, on the internet, it's like you could find all these places where Black people didn't live. and you could see people marching. Now, how does that happen empirically, right? The way that happens is people had to see George Floyd as human, right? But how does that happen? I argue that that happens primarily, not solely, but primarily through black popular culture. You go back 30 years when we actually start to see modern police brutality. It wasn't black social scientists talking about police brutality. It wasn't black educators talking about police brutality. It wasn't black filmmakers talking about police brutality. It was MCs. That was the only group. It was black MCs. It was hip hop. It was kids who grew up with and innovated hip hop. Now, I remember the first time I was on the yard at the University of Michigan and I heard a white kid playing hip hop out of their speakers. And we all turned our head like, what is that? Now, what we're facing in fascism is a cultural project. And one of the reasons it's so visceral is because people believe that with the demographic shift, we see young people for the first time believing in ideas of justice, believing that modes of the economy other than capitalism actually needs to be at least thought about. A group of kids that believe that police violence is wrong, right? So they're like, okay, there's no way in hell, like for the wealthy donors who fund places like Hopkins, and Loyola, they're like, wow, I'm gonna give my wealth to this kid, and this is what they believe? We can't have that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we should do. That's organizing in all the levels, that's actually pushing political officials to understand that the Democratic Party needs to be an opposition party, that we are fighting against fascism. But one of the things we have to do is understand that perhaps our greatest natural reservoir is culture. And it's culture that brings us together. It's culture that rewrites our identities. It's culture that helps us create new institutions. It's culture that brings our interests together. If George Floyd would have been murdered in 1970, the people that would have marched would have been black people and their left allies. Because he was murdered in 2020 in a place where hip hop and similar forms of popular culture basically changes the whole landscape, everybody saw and said, you know what? No, we need another way. That was wrong. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you so much. Dr. Spence's book is Knocking the Hustle. And like when he lays out the ways in which this comes together, we're going to do the final round of questions. We have another reading, and then we want to open it up for some conversation before we end this evening. So I want to come to Dr. Shields. I know, we're going to have you talk about the song, Dr. Shields, which is why we can never be on a panel together. We're going to have you talk about the song, and then we're going to have the last word from Katara, and then we have a student doing one more reading, and then I want to hear from you, Dr. Shields.
So I love my brother down there because culture is everything and everything I believe. And I'm glad you chose this song because I'm so married to it. It's actually a poem, just to let you guys know. And I got a chance to go to Florida Memorial, and that's the first thing that they say at this historic black college. So I was writing some notes, and the things that sort of came to me as I listened to it, and I'm so glad we don't know the ending of the song. Like those lyrics, like someone who's a writer who loves writing, I love the song. I love what it stands for. Things I was hearing, freedom and liberation, faith, perseverance. You said hope and progress, unity, collective voice, justice and equality, pride and identity. But one of the lines, that really, really stood out to me, which was freedom and liberation, is stony the road that we trod, bitter the chastening not, which I think symbolizes the pain endured by our people. That line is about sort of freedom and liberation. But you chose this song, and I don't even know if you know what I picked up on, which is right in line with the spirit of Sankofa, looking back. In the line, it's about honoring your ancestors. Honoring those that came before, and using music and, we know every movement across the country. We talk about This Little Light of Mine, which is a great song, one of Dr. King's favorite songs. I think about Harry Belafonte, who funded so many of these funerals. But go back to Tony Bennett. There were so many artists who played a major role in these movies. Malcolm, Dr. King, Fannie Lou Hamer, so many of these folks, they didn't have any resources, financial resources. They had resources. So it's so important for us to lean on the role of the artist. That's why my favorite of all is always Paul Robeson, or Paul Robeson, which I just found out today, is that's how you actually pronounce his name. Because he talks about this connection between art and activism, is that the artist has a major role. And to hear what you say, music, the MCs, when you talk about, NWA After Police, but you also you can talk about that song when you talk about police brutality, but then you can also talk about Bruce Springsteen, who people don't remember on when he came out with his song, 42 Shots, about Amadou Diallo, and they cut the TV off. You can go Google this yourself. He was singing a song, and Bruce, there's nothing more American than American Pie and Bruce Springsteen, but he decided I'm gonna sing a song called 41 Shots on live TV. And so I think the role of our artists, the role of our musicians are so important, but it's also we have to hold them accountable. And I'm glad you chose that song, because I want you all to go back home and really listen to these lyrics. And I like and I don't know, I'm one of those people like, and I get loud, that part at the end, but it's the end, the second verse, I think, that's the most powerful, that we negate when we just say we're just gonna sing this part. And so I love that. They sounded like I was like, is that take 6 up there? I mean, it took me into a state to really, really go back. So I appreciate you using that. And I feel that it's something that we should always sing. The Star Spangled Banner is about disrespect. It's about dishonor. And we sing that crap all the time. And it was written right here. And we sing it. That song is about, this is about liberation and celebration of black and brown. And that is about some bull.
So now I think we should sing it all the time, not just in February.
Yes.
It really is one of my songs. I went to Lincoln University, Pennsylvania, HBCU, under Dr. Neera Sadarkasa, the first black woman president of Lincoln, and we had to learn the first week that when I was in school, she made us learn the words. She sang it everything. A breakfast, a dinner, a lunch. We were getting ready to go on a bus trip. She gets on, let's go. So she hounded for 4 years because she said, you're never gonna, as a Lincoln graduate, you're never gonna go into a place and you have to mumble the words. You're gonna know, if you don't know anything else, you will know. I don't even know the class song for Lincoln. I have no idea I have no idea, but I know Lift Every Voice and Sing. Qatar, I wanna come to you, and then Amaya's gonna do a reading, and then we're going to have a little time for some conversation. Qatar, last question, please. If you can just connect this to why it's important for students when they pick up that pen and they write their own truth. Because this is something that was written as a poem, put to music by his brother, sang by 500 school children, but it was picked up by the NAACP, and it has survived and has become an anthem to us.
So I think it's important for students to write their own story, to have power over their story, because if you don't own your story, somebody else will. Somebody else will put assumptions on what you need, on who you are. People will change the narrative. And so it's important that you as students, college students, secondary students, Whatever it is, you have to own your own story because we want you to, again, be humanized. When you tell your story, you are making yourself human for someone else to know your experience. I quickly just want to share a story of a student that was part of our group. So he is now a sophomore at Howard University, but when he was a junior, he sat on a panel in front of about 200 educators and owned his story. He told this room full of educators about his experience in an advanced placement class. He talked about how he did not feel welcome by his peers or even by his teacher. And he went on to talk about some of the specific experiences he had in the class. And to see the look on the educators' faces, to know that they were feeling him, they were empathizing with him, they were seeing him as a human being who was having these experiences in school. And after that, that discussion, so many teachers, principals, even assistant superintendents came up to me and said, how can we make the experience for African Americans in AP classes better? How can we increase the enrollment of African American students in AP classes? How can we improve the interventions and the supports that we give students in classes so they don't have those experiences? But it's because he owned his story and we gave him a platform to do that. So again, going back to the empowerment, creating those spaces, that process of creating spaces for students to own their story is really how that change comes about. And so after that experience, he began to feel more empowered. He felt like he was valued because now he was able to see the following year more students in AP classes. Now our district has more than doubled our enrollment in African American students in advanced placement classes, and our scores are over the top. But because he owned his story. Mm-hmm. And when you own your story, you can tell it exactly how it is for you, and it now makes you more human for others to see it, to hear it, and to do something about it.
Thank you so much. We're going to drop out some mics for questions, but first I want to invite Amaya Guess up here. She is our last reader of the evening. She is a first-year student here at Loyola. I'm excited. She is a student in my class, and her reading is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., The Birth of a New Age.
Good evening, everyone. How are we doing tonight? Good. Hopefully that's because you got your ice cream or are going to get your ice cream. I'm honored today to be reading from The Birth of a New Age by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to use as a subject the birth of a new age. Those of us who lived in the 20th century are privileged to live in one of the most monumentous periods of human history. It is an exciting age filled with hope. It is an age in which a new world order is being born. We stand today between two worlds, the dying old and the emerging new. I am aware of the fact that there are those who would argue that we live in the most ghastly period of human history. They would contend that the deep rebellings of discontent Asia, and we have risings in Africa, the naturalistic longings of Egypt, and the racial tensions of America are all indicative of the deep and tragic midnight which encounters our civilization. They would argue that we are going backwards instead of forwards, that we are retrogressing instead of progressing. But far from representing retrogression or tragic hopelessness, the present tension represents necessary pains that accompany the birth of anything new. Thank you.
She now works at the Karson. I tell you, we like to get them when they first come in. I also want to thank Ava. Ava's also a student in my class. You take my class, you get pulled in. We have mics set up, and we would love to hear from a few people before we have our final comments. And what our panelists are going to do is, I want to talk about resistance, and I'm asking them to come up with just 3 small daily acts of resistance. What should we be doing now? Conversation is one piece of it, but this is a moment that calls on everyone to do something. So each of our panelists will give us a suggestion, but we do have time for 2 or 3 questions or comments, not dissertations, absolutely, but we'd love to hear a comment if you have one. Yes.
It's abundantly clear that we all can easily agree with you and Dr. Shields that second verse contains the very essence of what we're struggling with. I wanted to ask Dr. Karson that when hope, and I have to struggle to be hopeful in order to help other people to be hopeful, but what I want to know is when, and thank you for the direct lineage between Adolf Hitler and Donald John, whatever his name. What concerns me is Hitler's support system and Trump's support system. You know, when you talk about hope unborn dying, it's dying, and looking at Hedgepeth and the Supreme Court and all of those people, what happens, what can happen, how can we confront and assault Trump's support system, because he couldn't do what he's doing without help.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. So this support system, so Dr. Spence.
Can we actually take, because we can all go long.
Okay, so.
Take 3 comments now.
Yes, I think we only have 2, so we'll take both of them. Hello.
Hi, I want to ask, especially since you brought up President Obama, like there's been like pictures of him like before, the presidency in college, he, used to go and be a part of like Palestinian activism and stuff like that. And now like obviously he is like very much against that. So do you think that, like this is questions for any of you, do you think that like you can change a system from the inside, or are you destined to become a cog in the system if you decide to join it?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you so much. So I'm going to pull both the questions together, and that way we can answer them going quickly, because I think in these questions, it's embedded this idea of what does change and what does resistance look like, and I think it leads us right in. One is, how do we fight Trump's support system? We understand Hitler was not in every single village. He was not pulling the panels. He was not doing it was the people who had been empowered by him who took it one to the next step. Because even Hitler, some of the things they were doing, he was surprised in some of the writings that they were actually doing the medical experiments that were happening. I think it's interesting to know, and Dr. Spence, I'll come to you, but it's interesting to know that even when Nazi Germany looked at Jim Crow, even they said there are some steps that are too far for us. Like there are things that we're not going to do because that's a step too far. So think about that. Nazi Germany looked at Jim Crow America and said, well, you know what, we're going to go far, but there's some things we just can't touch. I want you to just talk about how do we attack the folks that are emboldening Trump and taking his power and making it their own. And then that way you can give us what resistance comes like, and then I'll make sure each person gets a...
So first, it's really, I think it'd be helpful to understand, for folks to understand that there's a literature, there's an academic literature that usually refers to this dynamic as democratic backsliding. Now, I disagree with some of the language, but that literature is really clear that even if when you have nations going backwards as far as democracy, a lot of them make U-turns and reverse that process, right? So to the extent that hope matters, then it's worth taking hope in that. But then the question is, okay, what distinguishes nations that are able to make effective U-turns from nations that aren't? So I'll focus on the 2 things that we have control over, even as individuals, right? So the one thing is that at least one political party has to understand itself as an opposition party. Not as a party that collaborates, not as a party that generates consensus, but as an opposition party. So I can't see anybody in here who's necessarily in office, but we all have political representatives. And even as we're in the state of Maryland as blue, we can push our political representatives to behave as if they're in an opposition party, right? The other thing that actually, that nations that are able to make the successful U-turn has, and it's more than this, but I'm just gonna focus on these two things, is like civil society institutions that are organized in a certain way, right? So, and when I say civil society institutions, I'm talking about things like churches, I'm talking about schools and universities, I'm talking about public institutions like libraries, like all of these things that, in as much as we're all members of some combination of these things, one of the things we can begin to do is begin to organize those entities' capacity. So as a professor, so what I've done is I've gone to the Baltimore County Public Library and I've started to hold sessions with like, what is democratic backsliding? I'm about to hold some sessions in the Baltimore City Libraries. Hopefully Kay is gonna help me with some of them on what is fascism? How do we combat that? Right? I'm talking to folk about doing similar things in churches, right? Now that's something that we can all organize, right? If you get those two dynamics, just those two things, just a little bit every day, we can begin to build capacity. We can begin to get people, our political representatives and others, to understand that we're in a fascist struggle, so they'll begin to change their behavior in certain ways. I mean, I can have like a 10-week long, 14-long class on this, but that's what I'll start with.
So I want you to just thank Dr. Lester Spence, political scientist from Hopkins. Thank you so much. And so, excellent. I'll come down to you, Ms. West, because what I think is interesting, and I talk about this in my class, that we're at a unique moment on the planet, that my students are shaking their head because they know exactly where I'm going. I'll tell them that the planet is hot, fat, flat, and crowded. But I say that there are like 8 billion people on the planet, that we have 7 generations on this planet right now, from the silent generation to the boomers, to Gen X, to the millennials, to Gen Z, to Gen Alpha, and now Gen Beta, born January 1st, 2025. So we are now at a point where you have all of these people on the planet, but Gen Z is who I want to focus on. Because Gen Z, I think there's something interesting happening here. Because this is a generation that when they were in middle school, they were marching out for Black Lives Matter. I mean, all those places we saw, these were little white kids marching out going, there's something wrong here. They marched out around gun control. They were the first ones dealing with shootings in school, and they said something has to be done. They marched down to D.C. and said, we want to demand that our elected representatives do something, which for many of us, we had never even done, to demand that they do something. And then they marched out for climate control. So they come from this legacy of marching, not taught by us, but they realized that they were feeling empowered. Well, now they're feeling hopeless because they feel like it's out of their control. So how do we get young people to be motivated, to not just be a cog in the system, right? But to change it from within?
Thank you for that question. I think it's important to note that young people can't do it all. Sometimes we put this work onto people of color, and we put it on young people. It is not their responsibility to change it. They want to change it because they know something is wrong. But it is up to us as the adults to create these spaces and opportunities where they feel like they can. And I'm going to bring up a situation with a school in our district where maybe about a month ago, about 150 students walked out in protest of gun violence. And they did that with the approval and the support of the adults. So we have to get out of our heads in terms of the power. We have the power. We are going to stop young people from doing these things. We have to be supportive of their efforts and understand where they're coming from. Again, humanizing them, understanding why they want to do these things. What is it that they are experiencing that is creating these feelings in them where they want to reach out, they want to protest, they want to do all these things. We have to find that out. And so when we're talking about the system from within, the children aren't the system. The children don't make the policies, right? So it is the adults. And so what we try to do is empower them to know the policies, right? So we always want young people to come to the table with information, come from a place of knowledge. This is what we can do, this is what we know we have in place, and then work from there. So to do it from within, we have to be in collaboration. And so Dr. Shields has been wonderful in working with our students and the adults that support them. That's the key component. So to bring it all together and to talk about how do we do it from within, it has to be a collaboration between students and adults.
Thank you so much, Senior Equity Specialist, Anne Arundel County Schools. And last but not least, Dr. Shields, I want to come to you because you are a poet, and with the power of words. One of the things I think about is like a textual lineage. That when we are done with this experiment called being human at this moment, when we run on ahead, what's going to survive is not just the people that we pour into, but what we have written, what we have put down on paper, because that's what we draw upon. When we go back, we're reading Dr. King's writings and we're drawing on it. We're reading Fannie Lou Hamer's writings, like we're actually pulling from their work. So can you talk for a moment about the importance of not just kind of tweeting your truth or Facebooking your truth, but actually putting it down somewhere where it gets passed along in your family as a record of how you stood at this moment?
I appreciate that question, or this statement as well. This is a generation, I call our generation, we are the photo album generation. So we're the generation that when someone dies, we sit around and pull out the photo album, right? This new generation knows nothing about that. There's no we're not sitting around. It's like we're looking at grandma's photos and we're like, you remember this baby photo? In the book. And so I think that this generation might forget that because they're locking everything into these devices. And these devices can go and change and do those things. And so I encourage you all, anybody out there, to write your stuff down. Write it, as they say, write it, make it plain, and make it simple, put it down. It's good to have this, but this causes what they call digital dementia. So what does digital dementia mean? My whole life is in this phone right here. I don't even know my mama's cell phone number. Serious, y'all saying, come on now. And so, you don't even know you can't. See, I wasn't even gonna say that, but I don't even know my kid's number. So I'm encouraging you to write stuff down. Yeah, this is when I say digital dementia, we are getting dementia much earlier, not just because of devices, because we're putting everything in here. And so when I talk about the photo album generation, which is our generation, it's very different. That I want to encourage you all to write your thoughts down. I want to encourage you to be mindful of your tweets, and then even go back and look at them. Because I think about the things that I've written, like, whoa, did I mean that? I look at presentations, I'm like, that presentation was really whack, man. Did I misquote so-and-so? But what I want you to do is I want you to write. I want you to write freely. I want you to put it down and don't judge what you write down. Just get it off your chest. One of the things that I appreciated about Abraham Lincoln, as what I discovered about him, is Abraham Lincoln, before he got into it, if Brother Spencer and I have a disagreement, I really want to call him and go off, he would write letters. He would write them down. The act of writing. And then when he had a conversation, it was very, very different because he processed it differently. And he would put it in a drawer and he would put it away. That's the power of word. Just the power of that. And when you asked on the radio, you asked us, and I want to go back to the young lady's question about politics. My belief is, as political science is, all politics is local. That's what you're doing. You're doing those things now. You ask us to come up with some small acts of resistance.
Daily acts.
Daily acts of resistance. And there were some things, and I just wanted to share mine quickly because I think this thing is so big, we act like we can't do anything. Like my Pastor Wilson said, he would say this in church, you so weak you can't pull a dead tick off of a dog because you let people pull you down. Y'all missed that part.
Two of them?
And so
Just give us two of them.
here are my two.
Okay, here are your two.
Protect your peace and tell the truth. Protect your peace and tell the truth. And Dr. K is a truth teller. Even when it doesn't feel good, she's a truth teller. And so as we talk about writing, as we talk about studying politics, as we talk about pouring into young people, but we encourage you, stop giving these people your power that's on TV, CNN, Fox, whatever you're watching. What are you doing in your neighborhood? What conversation are you having with your children? And don't be afraid of resistance. If your child disagrees with your politics and how you think, again, listen to them. Give them an opportunity, but also, shape them. I would tell my sons and my daughter when they would come home, the first thing they say, oh, so-and-so is racist. I said, racism is a highly loaded word. There are other things that this person could be before you get to the R word. Let's unpack those words, because when you go out to have these conversations, I want to make sure that your vocabulary is strong, that you know what you're fighting for, that you're just not going to call someone racist because you didn't have other words that you could have used prior. That's the power of the word. That's the power of the written word. So we encourage you to write. We encourage you to write. We encourage you to resist. We encourage you to repeat. We also encourage you, Pastor, to repent, right?
There you go. So Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I only have one. I have written and I've talked a lot about resistance. I have the North Star that is online that lays out how you can resist. I've actually made T-shirts, cups. Like, I have it out there in the public what resistance looks like. I do have one thing I'm going to add, which is the 11th thing. And I know you're going to laugh. I am telling you, it's the ice cream. Seriously. And I'm not saying go get a taste of freedom. Let me tell you, just the act of that has brought me so much joy. It made me realize that when you get steeped in 47, like, they're not just trying to take our power, they are stealing our joy from us. We've got to find ways to reclaim that joy. I'm telling you, Taste of Freedom is going to change this world. If I don't have anything else, I want to thank our panelists. We have two other things to do, and then we're wrapped up. Father Tim Brown is going to do our grounding exercise, and then we're going to have a closing prayer by my father, and then we will be done. Our guests can step down for the last two things. I'll give them out.
I had my moment last night preparing for a little prayer, and I brought a book, talk about an act of resistance. It's a book written by Frances Murphy Draper, and she happened to be at the event last night. She took her grandfather's journal. Carl Murphy, who was the publisher of the Afro-American newspaper. She took his prayers, not on a cell phone, but in his journal, and she took his meditations, and she gathered it in a way and published it this past summer. It's the book of our time. And I have two prayers, and they're prayers that really inspire hope. And St. Augustine said one time that of the three theological virtues, faith, hope, and love, hope is the most essential, because hope is what we cling to when there's nothing else. And he said, hope has two lovely daughters, anger and courage. Anger, so that what should not be will not be, and courage, so that what should be will be. And so I found these two prayers, the left, really a reality of our own time, written in the 1930s, and the right-hand side, a real message of hope. Our Heavenly Father, we have been taught all our lives to love our country and our enemies. It is our country and our enemies who rob us of our dignity, exploit our labor, and make us very little above the rank of servant. And so if we would be free, we must be prepared by nonviolence or through violence to work for it in defiance of our country and to the injury of our enemies. So today, we pray that we shall place freedom first for ourselves and all men and women, and if we must violate our consciences or our laws to achieve it, we shall have no hesitation, no regrets. Amen. The two lovely daughters of hope. O Lord, if ever anyone closes a door upon us, wilt thou open a window? If we close a door on anyone, help him or her to find a window. Please relieve us of our fears. Someone will close us in completely. That evil will destroy all rights. We believe that all things in this world work together for good for them who love the Lord. Please help us then to walk over disappointments, fears, hatreds, when the doors are closed, and look for the windows of faith and hope and love. Amen.
Dr. Frances Tony Draper, this is the book about her father, Carl Murphy. The Afro is the oldest running African-American newspaper in the country, which is still published right here in Baltimore City. I want to bring my father up for the closing prayer, and then I'm going to say one or two words, and then we will be done. Dad, would you you bring the, oh. Thank you, sir. Okay. Okay, no problem.
I'll give permission just to say just one thing. I had an opportunity to be one of the last person to see John F. Kennedy leave Andrews Air Force Base. All the others are dead. I also one of the persons who hosted Fannie Lee Hamer in Columbia, South Carolina, in 1969. Persons like that. I knew Vernon John, Martin King, and Dick Gregory. Personal people that I personally knew, and a bunch of others that I knew, but I want to just share that I'm a part of history. I lived more than 80 years. I'm 80 plus. I thought that'd be history, sister. Now we can have prayer. Amen. I want to thank God for what he has done and what he's doing. Let us pray. God our Father, we come tonight to say thank you for all that you have done and you're doing. And we've come to the level in our lives that we have nerve enough to thank you for the things that you're going to do, the place you're going to carry us, and how you're going to keep us, and that we're going to be faithful. It's in his name we do pray, and in his name we do live. Go in peace. Try not to sin anymore. Amen.
So the last word, as we round up the 5th anniversary of the Karson Institute, I want to take a moment and recognize my staff. Here, Ricardo Easton is the program manager for the Karson Institute. If she could at least raise her hand, do something. And if there are any of my staff members who are here, I think they're all out at the table. I also want to thank my students for coming and staying. Please definitely give them a hand. I want to thank Louis. Louis is here. If you could raise your hand, Louis. He does all of our graphics, which are amazing. Thank you so much. I want to thank Dr. Alvin Johnson. I've known him since I was 3 weeks old. My dad's like, not a week, 3 weeks. I mean, how do I remember? A week, 3 weeks, it was all the same to me. But Dr. Johnson, they were together at the march in 1963. Thank you. I want to thank my fellow panelists. Thank you so much, Ms. West. Thank you, Dr. Spence. Thank you, Dr. Shields, for stepping in. It has been an incredible journey at the Karson Institute. 5 years. There are people in the room, Tara, I'm looking at folks who've been at every single event, who just come on across the street and show up, which I appreciate. My hope is that we continue to move the Karson along. My goal is to make sure that the Karson can continue beyond me, that the Karson should not stop when I run on ahead to see how the end is going to be. The hope is that years from now, when young people come up on the campus of Loyola University, no matter their race or their ethnicity, which I think race won't matter too much as we go forward in the future with the ways in which people are coming together and cultures are blending, but that when they look for a place where they can speak truth, when they look for a place where they can sit and think, where they look for a place to ask the questions, my hope is that they'll see the Karson as that place. It'll be a beacon, it'll be a lighthouse, and it will continue to stand. Thank you for joining me for the 5th anniversary. I appreciate you. Oh, I'm sorry. Make the announcement. There is one more announcement. Thank you, Ricardo. This is why she's here. On the table outside, we have all of these wonderful items for a donation. We have some wonderful merchandise you can pick up to take a piece of the Karson with you. And the ice cream truck to Harker Brothers, you can get you a taste of freedom. Freedom ain't cheap, but freedom is here. Freedom is here. Thank you.